Hi, my name's Bev Ferris, and I'm the editor of the Business Travel magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to our latest business travel podcast. Today, I'm here with Daniel Barthuly from FREENOW. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Beth. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. And where are you speaking to me from today, Daniel?
I'm in rainy Hamburg in Germany today.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's actually quite nice here in the UK. So, welcome. Daniel, tell me what you do for FREENOW.
Sure. I'm the head of business travel in FreeNow. So in FreeNow, we have a multi-mobility platform open for B2C and B2B in 9 countries in Europe with a strong factor focus on taxi and B2B. And I'm heading the business travel organization European-wide.
Fantastic. So today, the reason we're having a chat is because FREENOW, in conjunction with the GBTA, has recently launched a white paper. Tell me a bit about the white paper, Daniel. What's it? What's the focus?
Yeah, so what we want to find out is a little bit the awareness of safety in business travel. And for that, we conducted a study in September and October where we asked business travelers on the one side and travel managers on the other side. So both parties involved in 4 markets, Germany, UK, Ireland, and Spain, from different companies, different sizes, different industries. And we had a sample size of around 400 for the traveler side and 100 for the travel manager side.
Okay. And in what made you? Why is it important, do you think, to have a survey of business travelers and the travel managers? What's the difference between their agendas?
Yeah, they usually have different sets of responsibilities for sure when it comes to business travel. So the travel managers organize everything around the business travel, and they have different aspects they need to balance out. So one is for sure safety, what we talk about today. The other one is cost control, reliability of the service, comfort for the traveler. So, for example, if a traveler is traveling in a city, should the traveler take public transport to the client, or should they get the comfort of taking a taxi, which is certainly more comfortable but more costly? And this is what the travel manager needs to balance out. Whereas the business traveler always would prefer comfort and an easy way of traveling for sure. And the responsibility of the traveler is to comply with the standards which the travel manager sets and the company sets out, and has also the duty to feedback to the travel manager what is going wrong, what is going good, etc.
Okay, and as we all know, that doesn't always happen, doesn't always go to plan, but hopefully this white paper will help to encourage that more of that. So I've seen the white paper. It's some fascinating findings in it, and I understand there were 7 key learnings that were identified. Do you want to start off run through the findings, and we can chat about them?
Sure. So first of all, our goal with this was to get first the perception of safety among both categories, so travelers and managers. And then also what actions do these companies actually take to ensure the safety of the travelers? And then at the end, also give recommendations how platforms, travel management platforms on ground transport and also on other areas of business travel can help in managing safety. And what we found out quite interestingly is on the business traveler side, there is a misperception of safety risk. They perceive that air travel and rail transport is more dangerous than ground transportation. While we see in statistics that ground transportation, not only the last mile, which happens in cities, but also on like other roads and car trips, is actually more risky that comes to yeah different accidents, fatalities, etc. And that's why it is important that the business travelers also perceive that there is risk, and this risk has to be managed by the travel managers. And what we also saw is that on the travel manager side, they actually see that safety is one of the top 2 challenges for their company. And that's what they need to balance out between, is it cost control? Is it reliability, comfort? What is also quite increasingly important is CO2 emissions, where they get guidelines from the company, from the board, to comply with. And while the safety is the most pressing challenge for the buyers, the business travelers on the other side are not really aware of what, yeah, say what safety risks there are in ground transport. And that's quite interesting that there is like a misbalance or a mismatch between the two interests. And what we also seen is that taxis, if we now go really on ground transport in the last mile, are seen as the, yeah, most safe third party mode. And we can for sure back this with why this perception happens. But also in taxi, and that compares to rental cars or public transport, there are certain risks like, I mean, everything when it comes to a road with vehicles is subject to some accidents. There are mostly humans interacting, drivers in the sense of taxis, and passengers, or in public transport, other clients, where things can happen. And also one aspect which is not to be yeah, forgotten is data safety. So the tracking of rides, if some passenger loses something in the car, that they can get it back, or harassment, etc. There are certain things where companies and travel managers need to, yeah, take care of and actionate about it before something happens, and which allows then the provider of the service to also force some action if something happens and some incidents take place.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done features about this before. It's interesting that travel managers they'll know exactly what airline their travelers are flying on. They know exactly what hotel they're staying in. They're in control of most of the aspect of the trip, but they often don't worry about this first and last mile. It's not managed. It's not tracked. You know, tr business travelers are just flagging taxis off the street, and that is something that I think they are becoming more aware of, but it is still it's not as prevalent as it is in the other sectors. So what is that something that you found? Is that something that was backed up by the white paper, the research that you did?
Yeah, definitely. And also for sure, a city is much more hectic, and you book the ground transportation or the last mile service more on the go. Whereas air or rail or flights, lodging, etc., is rather done in a calm environment at home. And that's why it should be really actionated about. And what we see is that while companies often do have overall risk-related policies, they often forget this ground transport aspect. And what we don't want is to over engineer and over regulate and take care of every little step. But it's really also about just sharing the information to business travelers, what can happen and what should happen, then from like who is responsible for what actions to take. And we see that only about half of all respondents always or often address ground transport in the travel policy as a first start. So the travel policy is first the rules for the traveler, what to do. But also then on the analysis side, like typical monitoring of certain risks and certain, yeah, reportings which traveler management has to report often also to C-level. This is often, yeah, forgotten, or half of the respondents say it's not that they take the most granularity in this one, or even safety trainings. So it doesn't have to be a physical training on how to enter into a taxi or how to ride cars, but it's rather if a traveler travels to a facility somewhere which is maybe not in the city center, in Europe, in let's say Paris outskirts, then there might be different rules to comply with than in the city of London. And these certain aspects in Europe, we are lucky that most of the cities are quite safe as compared to other markets. But still here, one example is if you are leaving the office, if you have a ground transportation provider and a platform, you can stay inside until the taxi arrives in front of your door. If you don't have that, you need to go to the taxi lane, where this kind of route to the taxi lane also has some risk in it. And these are the things where companies need to step up and really think the whole journey through, and not only like the typical aspects. And they also have a lot of ISO standard reports, which they can go line by line and kind of just background checking if they have something to tell the travelers or not. And we should not not forget that it's not about only consultancies which travel from main city to main city and only travel in taxis. It's also different companies with production facilities in rural areas where not everyone has this kind of awareness.
Yeah, so it's really about looking at the risk in a location of the individual traveler. There's a lot to think about here. And as you say, your reports showing that often that's not ground transport isn't part of the mix. So and obviously when you talk about the risk, what kind of incidents might people face on relating to ground transport? And how important is it for the travel managers to know where people are at all times to track the travelers?
Yeah, I mean, incidents are very different, but certainly accidents can happen. And then the question is, which insurance, what should I do as a business traveler if I have a meeting? Do I need to stay where the accident happens, etc.? Health issues, sudden illnesses, or also security threats like theft, harassment, or cybersecurity. These are like the generic categories. But in terms of really ground transport, the most important are certainly that um, the the travel manager can at all times track or monitor where what happened. And if there is any incident, and yeah, let's take the example of harassment, then we as a platform need to take care of that this driver, for example, is blocked and cannot drive anymore and even has some criminal legal actions to take, which is important. And what we found is that yeah, a minority, so only 24% say their company often tracks or always or often tracks the traveler and has the monitoring of which ride they took, where which accident or which incident happened. And that's certainly most important if something happens. We always advise for prevention before, with what I said about before. But
Mm.
if something happens, time matters, and for that, companies need to have clear documentation of the trip details. And this is where platforms kind of chime in and say, we have everything and we help you. And we also, as FREENOW, we have an escalation metric. So whenever something is around an incident with a driver or a vehicle, then this is escalated in customer care to just have a very fast response. And in the same time, the driver, until this whole incident is clarified, is blocked from taking other tours.
Definitely. So, obviously, what you're saying is that travel managers need to have a trusted partner when with ground transport. They need to
Yeah.
know somebody who's kind of doing all the safety checks for them to some extent, and also to then relay the information backwards and forwards, and they're going to always know be kept in the loop. So, talk me through some of the ways that other ways that FREENOW can provide some kind of confidence and reassurance to travel managers.
Yeah. So I think what is important to say is that the choice of a trusted partner is the most critical in the beginning. And this is not a one size fits all for all markets and global companies. There are, especially in Europe, very country and city specific providers, which they need then to take care of and manage. And it's then important that they really also have the best time on informing about safety. And what we believe is whenever a company provides a new platform or a new like booking engine for travelers, it's the best time to inform about all safety aspects as well directly, because certainly safety is often not the most attractive topic to tackle. But back to your question on really what we do is first, we for sure in all markets it's a little bit different, so a little bit of different regulations apply. But usually we vet drivers and licenses. So, for example, in London, we have private hire vehicles and taxis. Both licenses are slightly different, whereas yeah, in other markets they might be a little bit more merged, or even only one taxi license exists. Um, but usually it's that taxis have a little bit more checks and a little bit more education and knowledge, because also the licenses are kept in each city, or more kept than PHV. And what we do is certainly you check the license if it's valid, you check criminal background records, you check health status of drivers, and all of these things, yeah, need to be not only checked when onboarding a driver to the platform, but also regularly. So document management, we review over 5,000 documents weekly in London, which is quite massive. That happens certainly also digitally, but we also, as FREENOW, believe that physical offices where driver can at all times come in and ask questions and check in on certain documents is important. And this is for the London specific case, then shared also with Transport for London, TfL, which is quite strong in London, but also in other markets, there are similar authorities. And then in case of something happens, there has to be, as I mentioned, a clear escalation metric that, yeah, travelers are taken care of all the time. So overall, it's important to have really the first part of inspections, and checking all of the details. But then when it comes to more the regular tracking, it's what I said, with really having the ride at all times available, and our systems allow to track everyone, even if it sounds scary sometimes, um, to know where these drivers are. And this also means that implicitly drivers which work for FREENOW and accept a ride on FREENOW, they know that they are tracked, and they then implicitly do less things. Like that's unfortunately this happens with also drivers sometimes. But overall, the taxi business is considered as the most trusted, also in comparison to PHV, because taxi has been there since ages, and this is the trusted service. And then when it comes to the perception of safety for riders, we have a lot of features which kind of help, in terms of, you can always look into, before you take a car, into the driver profile. You see images, you see ratings, you see the vehicle. You can share your live location with friends, family, or even colleagues in some cases. We never share any personal detail between drivers and riders. So all of the communication is encrypted, and they can call each other, they can text with each other, but they will never know the private number or something like that. And these are some examples which help. And also, what is often, yeah, relevant is the rating system. So whenever something happens, and if a driver receives a lower rating, then this can be seen by the follow-up tours and the next business travelers, which they certainly don't want. And that's why they also try to, yeah, do the best job they can. But overall, taxis are quite safe, yeah, transport mode in Europe. And if we think of what we also offer on the platform, like scooters, car sharing, etc., there are other certain features, but it's also important that business travel managers select platforms which work with very trusted also scooter providers or e-bike providers, which check the vehicles if there is any damage, if the vehicle has any protection when it comes to e-bikes. So there are plenty of things we do, but we are always happy to have feedback from travel managers on what we can do even more.
Okay. And it's interesting you say it's not just about reassuring the travel managers, about the actual travelers feeling safe too. So all those those measures that you talked about, being able to live sharing with their families and colleagues, or looking at rider profiles. As a personally, if I've used tracks, that's really reassuring to me. So fascinating findings from the white paper. I think a lot of travel managers will be now thinking, right, we need to give this a bit more attention in our programs, and I think we're already seeing that. But I think this is going to really take off now. If they want to see the white paper and read about the findings in more depth, what can they do?
Yeah, so we could only touch the surface. In the paper, we also have country-specific details, which are not always very different, but there are slight differences. They can take a deeper look it's published on our website, or we share it in social channels like LinkedIn. And they can always reach out in case of any questions to us. Also, there is one interesting thing which might be a good read is that the ISO standards are also linked in this white paper to get a little bit more detail.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for talking to me today. It's been really interesting. And congratulations on the such a thorough and interesting white paper. I certainly enjoyed reading it. And thanks for talking to us today. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.